I want to talk about the enhanced theme provider. It's a new control, will be available in the next version of the PnP React controls. So the agenda, it's we talk about the problem to solve, the usage scenario, and just the introduction of this control and how to use inside the SPFx components. And then I'll show you just on a simple demo. So this control wants to solve some problem related on the style problem when you use the Fluent UI control or the basic HTML inside on a web part, and you deploy this web part inside Teams or in an isolated web part. There are some problems. For example, we have problem regarding the fonts, or basic HTML elements are not styled very well, or inside Teams, when you try to change the theme applied to the client, most problem is with the high contrast theme. All the Fluent UI React control supported by the SharePoint framework, the version 7, are not showed very well. So with this control, I want to try to resolve this problem. So the usage scenario inside Teams, you are able to create a web part and deploy as on a tab inside on a channel or on a personal app. When you try to deploy just the simple web part, you are able to see that there are some problems with the text style, the basic text style. And another usage scenario, it's the isolated web part. I don't know if you use the isolated web part, but if you try to use the isolated web part as a single part app page, so on a web part hosted inside on a SharePoint page as a full web part, it's very cool because you are able to define your web part with a lot of permission, but the permission are limited just to this web part and not to all the SharePoint application. And when you try to do the same, you have the same problem inside Teams. So there are problems with the font and basic HTML element. With this control, I'm trying to solve this problem. This control, it's considered just a wrapper for all React and non-React control, basic HTML element. And this control extends the functionality of the Fluent UI ThemeProvider control by adding some logics. Basically, have the same properties of the ThemeProvider control, but I added just a new property, the context. And by passing the web part context, I implemented some logic to, for example, if the web part that uses this control is hosted inside SharePoint, we can use the theme property or the default theme of the current site to apply the color set, the theme. But if the web part is hosted inside Teams, we can use the context property, it's automatically implemented inside this control, to check which theme is currently applied to Teams and intercept the theme variation if you try to change the theme in the client. And we apply a custom implementation, very similar to the default themes, to resolve the problem that we have with the default themes. So another cool property that it's inherited from the ThemeProvider control, it's the apply to property. You are able to set element, body, or none. If you set element, all the theme are applied to the childs of this control. But if you set to body, the styles are applied to all the page. And this is very cool to resolve the problem for the styles, for example, of the text. How to use this control? It's very simple. You have to install the PnP React control library. At this moment, if you want to try, you are able to use the dev branch. And you have just to put inside your React component this enhanced theme provider, select the apply to property as body element. It depends the usage that you want to use. And you have to pass, because it's a mandatory property, the context of the web part. And that's all. In this way, you are able to put all controls as a child, HTML, and the Fluent UI components will be rendered with a great UI. But if you want to access to the theme generated by the enhanced theme provider, you have the possibility to use the use theme hook if you created a function component, or the theme context.consumer control if you are created a class component. In the same case, you are able to use inside the enhanced theme provider, and then you have the ability to take the theme and apply to your own custom component or read value from colors or something like that. In which way this control is implemented? This is a portion of the code. It's simple, but by using the context, we are able to understand if the control is hosted inside a Teams or not. And in case it's hosted inside Teams, we are able to understand what is the theme applied. And in this case, we are able to take the implementation of the Fluent UI theme for the specific theme of themes. For example, this is the implementation of the palette of colors of the default theme, but I already implemented the dark, the high contrast theme. And then when we retrieved all the information to apply the correct theme, internally we use the theme provider to apply this theme. Okay, let's show you the demo. And this is just a sample web part as deployed as a personal application. And this web part, it's not using the enhanced theme provider. So this is the problem. The font are not applied correctly. And if you try to change the theme, you are able to see that the font it's not applied with the correct color. The component are not read the correct theme. If you try to reload the tab, now the color is almost okay, but we have some problems with this kind of palette. And then all the controls are not rendered very well. So if you try to use the plain theme provider, it's work, I think, better than the previous implementation. But if you try to change again to the different theme, you have to reload the tab. Now the text it's correct with the correct font and the correct color, but we have the same problem of the palette applied to the default Fluent UI controls. So with this enhanced theme provider, we are able to resolve all these problems. So you are able to see that the font it's the correct, and all the controls are rendered very well. So if you try to change now the colors, we are able to apply automatically the theme. If you try to change again to the high contrast, you are able to see that the font is okay, and almost all the controls are implemented with the correct colors. There are no problem now with the weight color and so on. And the same if you go back to the isolated web part. So this is an isolated web part hosted on a full page app part, and we have the same problem. So the text it's not formatted very well, and stop. So if we try to use on a web part that implemented this control, you're able to see that now the font are implemented at the correct style of the all SharePoint pages. And the same for the colors. So if you try to change the colors, black one, come on. Okay. So we go back to the slides. It is my contact, so you can send me an email, Twitter, LinkedIn, or follow me on GitHub. And this is some references regarding how to use the web part as a Teams tab or personal tab. Take a look at the isolated web part because are very cool way to create SharePoint app page. And then the reference to the original React theme provider if you want to use directly without the enhanced theme provider. So thank you, and back to you, Patrick.
Great, thanks, Fabio. Great stuff there. Hopefully that'll help folks out getting things themed correctly and making stuff look great.